They say adoption is a blessing, a gateway to paradise, a chance to mother the motherless. But let me ask you something. If you saw a boy with ribs like broken fences, flies resting on his lips, his eyes too weak to blink, would you carry him into your house? Would you risk your spotless floors? Would you let him touch your fine china? Would you give him your own food or your own name? Most people wouldn't. They'd cover their children's noses. They'd pull down the car windows. They'd whisper, "Don't look, that one is already gone." But that day in Lagos, outside the gates of a wide compound lined with palm trees and high electric fencing, something unusual happened. Because a woman with more wealth than she could ever count, the kind of wealth that built schools, sponsored church harvests, and imported dresses straight from Milan, stopped walking, and she bent down to touch the forehead of a dying beggar boy. Her name was Ifeoma Duramola, daughter of a cocoa magnate, widow of an airline owner, known in newspapers as Madame Lagos. She had 3 houses in Enkay, 1 holiday villa in Dubai, and a long list of drivers who knew better than to honk near her sleeping hours. But for all her gold, she had no child. For 15 years of marriage, she had prayed, fasted, paid offerings, climbed mountains for prophecy. Yet her womb remained silent, and when her husband died in a plane crash, that silence became her heaviest inheritance. Every evening, she would walk alone in her garden, brushing her palm against hibiscus flowers, asking quietly, "God, did you forget me?" But the answer never came, until one dusty afternoon, when she saw him. The boy was curled against her compound wall, skin the color of smoke, body thinner than her gardener's rake. His shirt no longer had sleeves. His shorts were held up with rope, and on his chest were flies. So many flies that her cook screamed and shut the kitchen window. "Madam, a beg, don't go near that one. He go bring bad luck." But Ifeoma kept walking, closer, until she could see the boy's lips moving, not crying, not begging, praying. "Papa God, a beg, just small water. If not my time, hold me for hand." Ifeoma froze. Her heart cracked. This boy was not asking for rice. Not for coins, not even for life, just for a hand to hold. She knelt down, and when her shadow fell across his face, the boy stirred. His eyes opened, cloudy, yellow, empty, but they looked at her, straight at her, like he'd been waiting. "Auntie," he whispered. "Not you?" His name was Chinedu, but no one called him that anymore. On the streets, he was gutter boy, market rat, small beggar. He had no mother, no father, no birthday, only scars. One across his forehead, from when traders pushed him off a cart. Another across his ankle, from when he stole plantain peels to eat. And the deepest scar, the one no one could see, from a night his younger sister died in his arms because he had nothing to give her. He hadn't eaten in 3 days, hadn't slept in 2, and that afternoon, his body was shutting down. That's when Ifeoma touched his forehead, warm, burning. She gasped, "This boy is dying." Her driver shifted uncomfortably. "Madam, leave him. Many boys die like him for Lagos. If you carry one, the rest go line up." But Ifeoma's voice sharpened. "Then let them line. This one is mine." She scooped him up. His weight was nothing, like lifting an empty sack. She carried him through her golden gates, across marble tiles, past chandeliers and portraits of her late husband. Her staff whispered. Some shook their heads, but she didn't care. She laid him on her silk guest bed, called 3 doctors, ordered soup, sat by his side, and when the boy coughed blood onto her white lace blouse, she didn't flinch. Instead, she wiped his mouth with her own sleeve and whispered, "You will not die. Not in my house. Not while I still breathe." That night, as the boy drifted between fevers and fainting, Ifeoma sat in her rocking chair. Her Bible lay open, but her eyes stayed on him, on his cracked fingers clutching the blanket, on the rise and fall of his chest, shallow but stubborn, on the way his lips still moved silently, praying. She remembered the whispers of her neighbors. All her wealth, yet no child. What is a woman without children? She remembered the gossip of her churchwomen. She hides with perfume, but barrenness has a smell. And she remembered her own nights of crying into a pillow. God, just one. Even if I must borrow from you. Just one. Now here he was, not born from her womb, but dropped at her gate. And she knew this was her answer. Not a baby wrapped in lace, but a dying orphan wrapped in scars. Her test, her gift, her second chance. By morning, the boy opened his eyes again, weak, confused, and saw her still there, still watching, still holding his hand. He croaked, "Onye, why you no leave me?" Ifeoma's throat tightened. She squeezed his palm gently. "Because heaven did not leave me, and now I will not leave you." The boy's lips trembled, then broke into the faintest smile, and for the first time in 15 years, Ifeoma felt like a mother. But here's the real question. What happens when the orphan you save grows into a man stronger than you? What happens when a beggar carries secrets worth more than gold? And when the boy you pulled back from death walks into your mansion years later, not as your child, but as a billionaire, do you still call him son? Or does he now call you stranger? 2 years later, Ifeoma stood at the edge of her balcony, holding a small wooden cross. It wasn't polished mahogany, not jeweled gold, just a crude carving Chinedu had once whittled with a broken razor blade, pressing his tiny fingers until they bled. He had given it to her on his first Christmas in her house. And now, 2 years later, she still kept it close to her chest, because the boy who carved it, the boy she pulled back from death, was no longer with her, not because he had died, but because one night, without warning, he vanished. No note, no goodbye, nothing but silence. And in that silence, her house had become emptier than ever. Her driver cleared his throat softly. "Madam, there's someone at the gate." She barely turned. "Who?" He wouldn't give a name. The driver hesitated, then added. He only said, "Tell her the one she fed is here." Ifeoma froze. The cross slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the tile floor. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Could it be? She ran to the corridor barefoot, skirts gathered in her fists. By the time the gate swung open, she was breathless. And at first, she didn't recognize him, because the boy she remembered gaunt, timid, eyes darting like a frightened sparrow, was gone. This one was taller, broad-shouldered. He stood with quiet stillness, his gaze steady, his presence unshakable. In his right hand, he held a leather-bound notebook. In his left, the tattered blanket she had once wrapped him in on his first night under her roof. The same blanket, stained with his blood. Her voice cracked. "Chinedu?" He nodded once. And just like that, her knees buckled. Tears blurred her vision. She dropped before him, clutching her chest. "Why did you leave me?" she whispered. "Why, my son? Did I fail you?" His voice was quiet, but unshaking. "I did not leave. I hid." She blinked rapidly. "Hid? From who?" His jaw tightened. "From those who wanted me silent." Her breath caught. "Silent? Silent for what?" He looked at her, but his eyes carried something she had never seen before. Not fear, not gratitude, accusation. "You," he said simply. The word struck her like a whip. She stumbled back. "Me? No, no, my child. How could I?" But before she could finish, he held out the notebook. It was weathered, pages yellowed, corners fraying. A diary, with entries written in a shaky, desperate hand. Names, dates, transactions, and at the top of every page, a phrase repeated like a curse. "Remember the orphans. Expose the thieves." Ifeoma flipped quickly, trembling, and then her eyes stopped. On the last page, where a name was scrawled in ink, so heavy it tore the paper, her own surname, Daramullah. The book fell from her hands. "What is this?" she whispered. But Chinedu didn't answer her question. Instead, he asked his own. "You saved me, madam. But did you save the others? Or did your family bury them alive?" That night, Ifeoma couldn't sleep. The words gnawed at her. Did your family bury them alive? She descended to her late husband's lock study, turned the old brass key, lit the lamp, and began searching through dusty files, through bound ledgers, through the archives of her family's cocoa empire. Hours passed, until finally she found it, a contract, signed nearly 20 years earlier. On the surface, it was for land development, but hidden in the fine print, its sole property once promised for an orphanage, land where children had been meant to live, play, grow. Instead, it had been sold to a private oil syndicate. The signature at the bottom? Her husband's. But next to it, forged initials that looked hauntingly like her own. And the money from that deal? It was the very seed money that had built her foundation. The same foundation the world praised her for. The one that earned her the title Mother Lagos. Her body shook. Her lips quivered. No, no, this is a lie, this cannot. But deep inside she knew. Chinedu had not come back to thank her, not to call her mother. He had come back to ask, was she savior or sinner? Now let me ask you this. What would you do if the child you rescued accused you of crimes you never knew existed? Would you search for the truth, even if it destroyed your legacy? Or would you silence him before his truth silenced you? Because the next move Ifeoma made would decide not just her life, but the destiny of every child who ever whispered her name. They say crowns make kings, but rarely do we see a person take off their own crown to place it on the head of one they once forgot. 2 years after the night Chinedu returned, the shelter had grown into something Lagos had never seen. Children poured in daily. Widows cooked in giant pots. Young men hammered wood, making bunk beds from scraps. And every evening, hymns and folk songs floated to the courtyard like smoke. At the center of it all was Ifeoma, the billionaire widow, once untouchable, now with her feet bare in the mud, lifting buckets, stirring stew. And beside her, Chinedu, not just a boy anymore, not just an orphan, but a voice, a presence, a leader, even when he didn't ask to be. On the day of the shelter's anniversary, elders from across Lagos came to witness. Men from the mosque, women from the market, youth leaders from Ajigunal. Even kings sent envoys. One stood up and said, "This boy was found in the gutter. This woman was found in her pride. But today, both stand together. Should we not honor that?" The crowd murmured. Another elder turned to Chinedu. "Boy, do you wish to rule?" Chinedu's eyes burned. He shook his head slowly. "I do not wish to rule. I only wish for no more boys to sleep under bridges." Then they turned to Ifeoma. "Madam, do you wish to rise?" Her throat tightened. "I will rise," she said softly, "only if I can take my people with me." The final elder nodded. "Then rise together." She lifted a small gourd bowl, and inside were 2 items, a diary and a ring. The diary, the same Chinedu had carried back, its pages now sealed, no longer a curse but a record of truth. The ring, simple, silver, plain. She placed the ring on Ifeoma's finger, and the diary in Chinedu's hands, then declared, "You will not be rulers. You will be restorers. The forgotten shall follow you, and the future shall call you parents." The crowd erupted. Children clapped. Drummers pounded rhythms. Women ululated into the air. And in that moment, Lagos called them both by a new name, Mother Mercy, Baba Chinedu. The next morning, newspapers screamed headlines. Billionaire widow and street boy named restorers of Lagos orphans. From drainage to destiny, Chinedu now leads the forgotten. Hope rises from the streets. But inside the shelter, nothing changed. Ifeoma still washed plates. Chinedu still swept the yard. Meals were still simple rice and beans. But now, there were hundreds more mouths. And every child that entered touched the diary at the door, like a relic, whispering softly, "Thank you, Baba Chinedu." But peace never lasts. Not in Lagos. Not in the world. Because the past always returns. Not as shame, but as temptation. The temptation came in the form of a young man named Femi. He was handsome, educated, quick with numbers, and Ifeoma herself had trained him to manage accounts. But hunger for power burns differently in different men. One morning, donors called, funds had vanished. Contracts were signed, in the shelter's name, for projects no one approved. Femi had created a fake branch of their foundation, collected millions, and used the orphans' names to build his own empire. When Ifeoma confronted him, her hands shook with rage. "You stole bread from children's mouths," she spat. But Femi only smiled. "You turned this place into a temple. I simply collected the offerings." Her blood boiled. She raised her hand to strike him, but Chinedu stepped forward, calm. "Let him go." "What?" Ifeoma's voice cracked. "He betrayed us. He robbed us." Chinedu looked at her belly, swelling now with her unborn child, and whispered, "Don't let our children see wrath before they see peace." Femi left, but the wound remained. Donors pulled out. Food ran low. The city whispered, "Perhaps the shelter saints are not so clean after all." The children felt the fear. The mothers wept. The city turned its face away. And then Ifeoma went into labor. It was raining that night. No ambulance came. Phones rang with no answer. So on a thin mattress in the prayer room, surrounded by women, Ifeoma screamed into the storm. Sweat poured. Tears mixed with rain dripping from the leaking roof. Hours passed. And then, just before dawn, a cry split the night. A baby girl. Tiny. Weak. But breathing. Ifeoma wept. Not from pain, but from the weight of hope. Chinedu cut the cord with a rusty razor, wrapped the child in the same blanket he once bled on, and whispered, "Welcome, my queen. You are born of ashes and light, and no one will take your name." Ifeoma smiled weakly. "Her name is Rama, mercy." But mercy is always tested. The very next day, a letter arrived, but they will never erase what we built in hearts. Then something shifted, not from the powerful, but from the people. Former shelter boys, now mechanics. Women who once ate there, now nurses. Taxi drivers. Teachers. They flooded social media, shared old photos of the shelter, testimonies, videos, songs. Hashtag spread like fire. Hashtag Rama deserves peace. Hashtag Ifeoma is truth. Even foreign embassies noticed. Within weeks, the lawsuit was dropped. The board fell silent. And instead, a new invitation arrived, not from courts, but from Geneva. The Rebuild Circle, an international foundation, offered to fund 10 shelters across Africa in Ifeoma's name, but only if she would share her story with the world, write her memoir, stand on stages, be seen. She hesitated. She feared the glare, the judgment. But then she looked at Rama, tiny, smiling, and whispered, "We walk through fire, so the next one can walk in peace." 6 months later, Ifeoma stood before thousands in Geneva. No makeup, no diamonds, just her white wrapper, and Rama in her arms. Her final words went viral across continents. "I was saved by a homeless boy. I was judged by my blood. I was crushed by betrayal. But I rose not alone. I rose with hands the world once ignored. If you are lost, hungry, hated, used, know this, you are not broken. You are chosen, and mercy lives in you." Back in Lagos, the shelter walls were repainted. At the entrance, a plaque was nailed. "House of Rama, where forgotten seeds bloom." And Chinedu, he finally accepted the title. Not king, not president, just Baba Chinedu. He never left the shelter. He built swings, told bedtime stories, and every night, little Rama toddled beside him. "Uncle," she would whisper, "tell me the story where you saved Mama." And he would always reply, "No, the story where she saved me." So if you think goodness is wasted, it's not. If you believe prayers go unheard, they don't. If you think saving one life cannot change the world, you're wrong. Because Allah sees, the world remembers, and legacy always finds its way home. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away. Comment Rama. If you believe mercy is greater than revenge, share this with someone who once felt invisible. And tell us, have you ever been saved by a stranger? Your story could change someone else's life.